Rylan adjusted his backpack as he stepped onto the landing platform of the space station, the hum of engines vibrating beneath his boots. The station was enormous, a floating city in orbit above the green and blue marble of Urindor Prime. He had heard about the station for years, stories of alien civilizations, advanced technologies, and humans who dared to live among them. Yet nothing had prepared him for the first sight of it. Above him, sleek ships curved like silver birds, docking and departing in precise patterns. The platform was crowded, not just with humans like him, but with beings of every imaginable shape. Some walked on 6 legs, others floated without touching the ground, and one group seemed to shift their forms subtly, as if their bodies were made of liquid light. It was overwhelming and exhilarating. Ryland's mission was simple, at least in theory: deliver critical supplies to a household that specialized in interstellar maintenance, then return home. But the human colony on Urindor had strict rules. Humans were welcome in the station, but they were expected to follow local laws, respect alien customs, and, most importantly, never underestimate the intelligence or power of their hosts. He adjusted the strap of his pack again, glancing nervously at the alien security units patrolling the platform. Their elongated limbs moved in perfect synchronization, eyes glowing faintly blue. One of them paused near him, its gaze penetrating, then moved on. Ryland swallowed and reminded himself that humans had survived in places far worse than this. He could do this. The delivery was simple: a crate of rare minerals and tools for the household's workshops. He was supposed to meet the caretaker, a humanoid alien named Lyra, known for her efficiency and strictness. Lyra was one of the station's most respected maids, a term that seemed quaint for someone capable of running an entire section of a station alone. Stories described her as meticulous, disciplined, and utterly brilliant, handling dangerous machinery and complex schedules with ease. As he walked down the corridor leading to her quarters, he noticed the subtle differences in architecture. Walls shifted in hue depending on the time of day, floors seemed to pulse slightly as if alive, and the lighting adjusted to match the mood of those walking through it. Humans had only begun to learn to adapt to such environments, and many found it disorienting. Rylan had trained for this, yet a small part of him still felt out of place. At the door to Lyra's quarters, he hesitated. It wasn't fear exactly, but a deep respect for the unknown. He raised a hand, and the door slid open silently. Inside, the room was bright but uncluttered, filled with strange devices and panels of unknown function. Lyra herself was standing at a console, her form humanoid but with skin that shimmered faintly in gold and green tones. Her eyes were deep violet, intelligent and assessing. "You must be the human delivering the supplies," she said, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. "I trust you understand the importance of what you carry. Focus on observing, not controlling." As she set the crate down and began sorting the contents, Rylan couldn't help but glance around. The room was filled with devices that hummed softly, projecting holographic schematics in the air. Tools and materials floated in small orbiting loops, responding instantly to Lyra's gestures. It was a level of organization humans rarely achieved. "You're impressed," she said without looking up. I've never seen anything like this," Rylan admitted. "It's incredible. Mistakes here can be dangerous." Rylan tried to take it all in, scribbling notes in his small datapad. Each demonstration was more impressive than the last. Hours passed quickly, though it felt like minutes. Rylan found himself adapting to the flow of the room, anticipating Lyra's movements and understanding the logic behind her methods. By the time she paused, he was exhausted but exhilarated. "Enough for today," she said. "You've learned the basics. You'll continue tomorrow." "I've learned more in a few hours than I ever imagined possible." The human instinct to adapt, to push forward, to survive, it would be his greatest asset here. As he left her quarters and returned to the station's main corridor, Rylan felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He wasn't just delivering supplies. He was stepping into a world where humans were the underdogs, yet capable of extraordinary feats. And he was determined to prove that humanity could rise, even among beings far more advanced than themselves. Later, as the station lights dimmed for the cycle's rest period, Rylan sat in a quiet corner, reviewing his notes and reflecting on the day. He realized something important. Humans were small, fragile, and often underestimated, but humans were resilient, inventive, and stubborn. Those qualities had carried humanity across countless stars, and they would carry him here too. Little did he know the next challenge would come sooner than expected. A sudden alert flashed on his datapad. A maintenance unit had gone offline in a restricted section of the station. Reports indicated strange interference, potentially hazardous to anyone who entered. Ryland's pulse quickened. This was not part of his training, not part of any delivery schedule, yet he felt a spark of determination. He had witnessed the skill and precision of Lyra, the alien maid whose reputation rivaled any commander's. If humans were to prove themselves, moments like this would define them. He stood, checking his equipment. Whatever waited in that restricted section, he would face it. And he would face it not just as a visitor or delivery boy, but as a human, adaptable, resourceful, and unbroken. Ryland's first real test on Urindor Station was about to begin, and for the first time in his life, he felt the thrill of true purpose. Ryland moved quickly through the station's corridors, his boots echoing softly against the polished floors. The alert had been clear. A maintenance unit had gone offline in the restricted section. That part of Urindor Station was off-limits to most humans, guarded by strict security protocols and monitored constantly by artificial intelligence. Only highly trained personnel or trusted aliens were allowed access. Yet here he was, a human barely a day into his assignment, heading straight for a situation most experienced officers would avoid. The corridor leading to the restricted section was dimly lit. Walls of metallic gray reflected faint glows from overhead panels, and small vents hissed, releasing controlled bursts of atmosphere. Ryland checked his datapad for the maintenance map, tracing the path he would follow. He noted the security cameras and automated patrols, all of which seemed to shift subtly as he approached. He paused at the first checkpoint, a sliding door that would normally require an access key. He activated the temporary clearance Lyra had set up earlier, which allowed him limited access for observational purposes. The door hissed open, revealing a narrow tunnel. A faint vibration ran along the walls, like the pulse of a living thing. Ryland's hand went to the strap of his backpack, where he kept basic survival tools, a portable scanner, a multi-tool, and a small energy blaster for emergencies. The corridor twisted and turned, and Ryland felt a growing sense of unease. The offline unit was just ahead, but the readings on his scanner were unusual. The energy flows in this section of the station were fluctuating, spikes of electromagnetic activity alternating with sudden drops. Machines that had once hummed steadily now pulsed irregularly, as if alive. Then he saw it, the maintenance unit. It was a sleek machine about the size of a human torso lying still against the floor. Panels flickered with error codes and faint sparks jumped across its surface. Ryland crouched, scanning it carefully. The data was incomplete, fragmented, and the error logs were unlike anything he had encountered in human systems. "Impossible," he muttered. Machines here were advanced, self-correcting, and highly resilient, yet this one had failed completely. And the patterns, they weren't natural. Someone or something had tampered with it. Ryland's instincts told him to call for help, but he hesitated. Security response time would be long, and if the interference spread, it could affect the entire section. He had to act quickly. Humans had a reputation for improvising in impossible situations. It was time to prove it. He set his backpack down and activated the portable scanner. A holographic interface projected from the device, mapping the malfunctioning unit and the surrounding energy flows. He traced the interference to a small, concealed panel on the far wall. The panel wasn't part of the standard station design. It seemed to have been added recently, its edges rough and uneven. Ryland approached cautiously. The scanner identified it as a conduit for energy flow, but the readings were erratic. Whoever had tampered with the maintenance unit had also altered the station's energy grid. This was no accident. Someone was trying to hide something or prepare for something. He took a deep breath and activated the energy blaster. Not to attack, but to create a small controlled pulse that could reset the malfunctioning unit. His hand trembled slightly, but he focused. Human ingenuity often relied on simple principles, applied creatively. A controlled pulse could stabilize the system long enough to identify the source of interference. The blaster emitted a low hum, and Ryland directed the pulse toward the maintenance unit. Sparks flew, and for a moment he feared he had made things worse. Then the machine's lights stabilized, the panels glowed steadily, and the error codes disappeared. The scanner confirmed the unit was operational again, but the interference persisted. Ryland studied the hidden panel. It was small, no larger than a control tablet, but its energy signature was unusual. Someone had deliberately connected it to the station's primary systems. If left unchecked, it could disrupt everything. He crouched, examining the panel. There were no labels, no instructions, only raw energy lines and a series of symbols he didn't recognize. He traced the connections with his fingers, careful not to touch the active circuits. Then he had an idea. Humans were known for pattern recognition, improvisation, and adaptability. If the symbols represented a sequence, it might be possible to reverse the effect by applying a mirrored sequence. It was risky, but waiting for help might allow the interference to spread. Rylan activated his multi-tool, a device capable of manipulating electronic and mechanical systems with precision. He carefully traced the energy lines, adjusting their alignment according to the mirrored sequence he imagined. The panel's glow shifted, flickered, and then dimmed. A low hum ran through the floor beneath him, growing in intensity, then abruptly stopped. The interference was gone. The station's systems returned to normal, and the maintenance unit emitted a soft, steady beep. Rylan exhaled sharply, relief flooding him. He had done it. Humans were small, fragile, and often underestimated, but they could overcome impossible odds with creativity and determination. As he stood and collected his tools, a shadow fell across the corridor. Rylan froze, turning slowly. A figure emerged from the darkness, Lyra. Her violet eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and she moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost otherworldly. "You took the initiative," she said calmly. "I see humans are capable of more than I expected." Courage, creativity, decisiveness. These are traits that define human resilience. You did well, Rylan, but this is only the beginning. The interference was deliberate. Someone or something is testing the station's defenses. That is a valuable trait here. Humans often underestimate their own potential. Lyra guided him back toward the main corridor, explaining the potential consequences of tampering with the station's systems. Even a small disruption can cascade into serious failures. Life support, propulsion, energy grids, all are interconnected. One mistake, one miscalculation, and the station could be crippled. He realized that being human here wasn't about brute strength or advanced technology. It was about thinking, observing, adapting, and acting with precision. These were the skills that could make humans indispensable in alien societies. They reached the main corridor, and Rylan paused to look back at the restricted section. The faint hum of the station surrounded him, a reminder of how fragile yet resilient this world was. Humans were small players in a vast universe, but they carried potential far beyond what most aliens expected. "Rylan," Lyra said, her voice soft but firm, "you have passed your first real test, but be aware this was only the beginning. The station is older than many civilizations, and its mysteries are vast. You must remain vigilant. Curiosity and courage alone are not enough. You must also have wisdom, foresight, and patience." Humans had survived countless challenges, and they would survive this one. Later, in his small quarters, Rylan reviewed the day's events. He documented everything: the interference, the malfunctioning unit, the hidden panel, and his improvised solution. He understood that knowledge was power, and the more he learned about the station, the better prepared he would be for future challenges. As he closed his datapad, a new alert appeared: a minor energy spike detected in a nearby docking bay. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but enough to trigger automated monitoring. Rylan's pulse quickened. Someone was testing the station again. He stood, ready to act. This time, he wasn't just a human observer. He was a participant in a living, breathing system, one that could challenge his abilities at every turn. And he knew that humans, with their adaptability, courage, and relentless drive, could rise to meet any challenge. Rylan's adventure was far from over. The station had secrets, dangers, and mysteries waiting in every corner, but for the first time he felt not fear but excitement. He was human, small but resourceful, fragile but unyielding, and in a universe that often underestimated his kind, that was enough. He took a deep breath, preparing to face whatever the next challenge would bring. For humans had a way of turning impossible situations into triumphs, and Rylan was determined to prove it, one calculated, courageous step at a time. Rylan moved through the docking bay, his steps careful, eyes scanning every corner. The alert on his datapad had been precise: a minor energy spike, barely enough to register on the station's monitors, yet enough to suggest activity beyond normal operations. His mind raced, analyzing possibilities. Was it a malfunction, a hidden experiment, or something far more deliberate? The docking bay was vast, stretching hundreds of meters in every direction. Ships of every shape and size floated in orderly rows, held by magnetic clamps that hummed softly. Crew members of various alien species moved about, checking engines, securing cargo, and monitoring systems. Most were unaware of the energy fluctuation. It was subtle, hidden beneath the station's vast network of activity. Rylan activated his portable scanner, sweeping the area. The spike originated near one of the older docking pods, a section rarely used by visiting ships. The pod's door was partially open, a flickering light casting uneven shadows across the floor. Rylan's instincts warned him to proceed cautiously. He approached slowly, keeping his hand near the strap of his backpack where his multi-tool and blaster were stored. The scanner confirmed his suspicion. Energy patterns here were inconsistent with any known system. Whoever, or whatever, was causing the spike had altered the pod's circuits subtly, masking their activity from standard monitoring. Rylan crouched, examining the control panel near the door. He could see faint fingerprints of energy manipulation, but they didn't match any alien techniques he had studied. The pattern was erratic, almost experimental, yet deliberate. He realized that he was dealing with someone highly skilled, someone who understood both alien technology and human methods well enough to anticipate common responses. A low hum echoed from inside the pod, and Rylan paused. The source of the energy spike was inside. He took a deep breath and activated a small projection on his scanner, mapping the interior of the pod in holographic detail. The display showed rows of containers, some with strange energy fields surrounding them. One container pulsed rhythmically, faint blue light spilling out through its semi-transparent walls. Rylan's curiosity flared. He had seen advanced storage pods before, but never with energy fluctuations like this. Whoever had tampered with it wasn't just hiding or testing, it seemed to be protecting something. He adjusted his scanner, zooming in on the container. The readings were unstable, like the energy was alive, reacting to his presence. Caution won over curiosity. Rylan retreated a few steps and analyzed the data. The container's energy signature was unfamiliar but not immediately dangerous. It reminded him of reports about experimental power sources used in older parts of the station, long retired because they were too unpredictable. Somehow, someone had revived one of these sources. Rylan's mind worked quickly. Humans were known for creativity under pressure. He decided to test the energy field without touching it directly. Using his scanner, he emitted a controlled pulse to measure its stability. The field shimmered, then settled, revealing a faint outline of the object inside. It was a small device, no bigger than a human hand, glowing faintly with blue energy. It looked intricate, with moving parts and layered circuits. But there was something more. A small emblem etched on its surface, a symbol he recognized from Lyra's instruction manuals, a symbol associated with station-wide security protocols. Rylan's pulse quickened. This was not random. Whoever placed the device here had access to high-level systems and knowledge of the station's inner workings. It was sophisticated sabotage, or an experiment hidden in plain sight. Either way, it was beyond anything a human or untrained alien could handle. He activated his multi-tool, carefully scanning the device without touching it. The scanner displayed a complex sequence of energy flows, some moving in patterns he recognized from Lyra's demonstrations, others completely foreign. He realized this was not just technology, it was a puzzle, a challenge, and perhaps a test. Curiosity and courage, Rylan muttered to himself. Time to see how human ingenuity measures up. The pulsating rhythm eased and the blue glow softened. Rylan felt a surge of satisfaction. Humans had a reputation for improvisation, and right now that reputation was proving itself. A sudden sound made him freeze. A metallic hiss echoed from the far side of the pod. Rylan turned, scanning the shadows. A figure emerged, moving swiftly and silently, its form humanoid but unfamiliar. It wore a dark suit with small lights along its edges, blending into the dim environment. The being's eyes glowed faint red as it observed him. "You shouldn't be here," it said in a voice calm and measured, but with an undercurrent of warning. Rylan straightened. "I could say the same to you," he replied. His voice didn't waver. Humans often faced threats with confidence, and sometimes confidence alone could buy time. "I'm investigating an energy spike. Whatever you're doing is affecting the station's systems." Humans survive in situations others can't imagine. We notice, we adapt, we act. That's how we thrive. And sometimes, we protect others in ways no one else can. Patterns emerged that he hadn't seen before, a rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat, and energy lines that responded to external observation. It was sophisticated, unlike anything he had encountered. yet he recognized a logic within the chaos. Using the principles he had learned from Lyra, he began mapping the energy sequences in real time, noting reactions, adjusting his scanner to align with the device's internal rhythm. Slowly, he began to understand. This wasn't just a power source. It was a control node capable of influencing multiple systems across the station. Whoever had placed it here had the potential to disrupt or protect the station entirely. Hours passed. Ryland's concentration was absolute. Every adjustment, every observation was critical. Humans were known for persistence, and right now, persistence was paying off. By the end of the cycle, he had managed to stabilize the device enough to prevent further interference, though he still didn't fully understand its purpose. As he stepped back, the red-eyed figure approached. "You have skill," it said almost reluctantly. "Few could have achieved this. Most would have failed or destroyed the device. Humans have a way of making the impossible possible. We adapt, we endure, and we find solutions others can't imagine. I'm ready. Humans don't back down. We rise to challenges no matter how impossible they seem." Humans were small, fragile, and often underestimated, but their ingenuity, courage, and persistence allowed them to thrive where others failed. When he returned to his quarters, he documented everything in detail: the energy spike, the hidden container, the device's patterns, and the encounter with the unknown figure. He knew that this was only the beginning. The station was alive with mysteries, tests, and hidden dangers, and he, a single human, had already made a mark. As he lay down to rest, his thoughts were not of fear but of determination. Humans had survived deserts, oceans, wars, and the vast emptiness of space. They had built civilizations, explored worlds, and solved problems others deemed impossible. And here on Urindor Station, they would continue to prove their worth. The next day promised new challenges. Reports hinted at further anomalies in the station's energy grid, subtle disturbances that could escalate if left unchecked. Ryland knew that whatever was testing the station, and testing humans, was only getting started. But he also knew that human creativity, courage, and determination were more than enough to meet it head-on. Ryland smiled to himself. Humans were underestimated, but that was their greatest strength, and he intended to prove it, one calculated, courageous step at a time. Ryland awoke to the soft hum of the station, the lights shifting subtly to match the rising energy flow of Urindor Prime below. Reports from the previous night's anomalies had multiplied overnight. The energy grid of the station was experiencing further irregularities, spreading beyond the docking bays and into the living quarters, laboratories, and even the observation decks. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but Ryland could see the pattern forming. The station was alive, and it was under pressure. He grabbed his datapad and scanned the latest reports. Automated monitoring units had flagged fluctuating energy lines, some of which intersected with previously stabilized nodes, like the device he had encountered. The implications were clear. Someone, or something, was systematically testing or manipulating the station's systems. It was deliberate, and it was escalating. Ryland's first instinct was to inform Lyra. She had the experience, the authority, and the knowledge to manage such situations. But as he reached for the communicator, he hesitated. Lyra had stressed the importance of observation, adaptation, and initiative. Humans often learned fastest by acting directly. Ryland decided he would investigate first, gather information, and then report findings. He moved through the station corridors with quiet determination. The energy readings led him toward the station's central hub, a massive chamber where the primary energy cores and control nodes were located. Humans rarely accessed this area. Security protocols were strict, even for highly trained alien personnel. Yet here he was, a human, relying on curiosity, courage, and instinct to guide him. The central hub was awe-inspiring. Towers of crystalline energy conduits stretched toward the ceiling, each pulsating with soft light, feeding the station's complex network. The air vibrated faintly with raw power. Ryland's scanner indicated multiple minor disturbances in the energy flow, each one subtle, yet collectively enough to destabilize key systems if left unchecked. As he analyzed the readings, he noticed something alarming. The disturbances were not random. They formed a path, a trail of sorts, leading deeper into the hub. Following it carefully, Ryland traced the flow to a sealed access door. The energy patterns beyond it were fluctuating, almost like a heartbeat. Whoever or whatever was causing the disturbances was inside. Ryland checked the door's security protocols. It was designed to allow only the most authorized personnel to enter, but with the understanding of the station's systems he had gained, he could override the locks just enough to gain entry without triggering alarms. This was risky, but humans were known for calculated risks in moments of uncertainty. He stepped through the door into a chamber unlike anything he had seen before. The walls were lined with panels covered in symbols and lights, many unfamiliar. At the center floated a massive energy node, its form shifting and changing, pulsating with an inner glow. It radiated power, but it was unstable, reacting to the fluctuations in the station's network. Rylan approached cautiously, analyzing the node. His scanner identified complex sequences, some matching standard protocols, others entirely foreign. He realized that the node was being manipulated externally, controlled by someone with access to advanced systems knowledge. This was no longer a minor test, it was a potential threat to the station's stability. As he studied the node, he noticed movement from the shadows. A figure emerged, humanoid, draped in a cloak that shimmered with faint energy. Its eyes glowed softly, observing him. Rylan's hand instinctively went to his multi-tool. "You shouldn't be here," the figure said, voice calm yet commanding. "This area is off-limits to all, human and alien alike. Few humans have survived long in this environment, let alone navigated the systems with such understanding. Your presence is unusual. Curiosity and courage, admirable traits of your species. But do you understand what you face? This node connects to the station's core systems. Any misstep could cause catastrophic failure. I intend to do the same here." Using techniques he had learned from Lyra and his own understanding of human ingenuity, he began mapping the sequences in real time. Every fluctuation, every pulse, every irregularity was documented and analyzed. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The disturbances were intentional, forming a deliberate sequence. Someone was probing the station's defenses, testing reactions, and identifying weak points. As he worked, the node pulsed violently, sending shockwaves through the chamber. Rylan steadied himself, adjusting his scanner to compensate. The figure watched silently, clearly impressed by his composure and analytical approach. Hours passed, yet Rylan continued without fatigue. Human persistence was unmatched, and his determination grew with each challenge. Finally, he identified the core flaw in the external manipulation, a sequence error that, if corrected, could stabilize the node and prevent further disruptions. Carefully, he applied the correction, using his scanner and multi-tool to realign the energy flows. The node's pulsations slowed, then settled into a steady rhythm. The chamber vibrated softly, a sign of restored balance. Rylan exhaled, realizing he had succeeded. The figure stepped forward. "Remarkable. Few beings, human or alien, could have achieved this. You have stabilized the node and prevented a potential catastrophe. We may be underestimated, but our ingenuity allows us to overcome challenges that others deem impossible." Humans were small, fragile, and often underestimated, yet their adaptability, intelligence, and persistence allowed them to survive and thrive where others could not. If the station presented further challenges, humans could face them and succeed. Before leaving the chamber, Rylan documented every detail: the node, the energy flows, the external manipulation, and the encounter with the figure. Knowledge was power, and by recording everything, he ensured that future challenges could be met with preparation and insight. As he exited the central hub, he felt a surge of determination. The station was vast, its systems intricate, and its mysteries deep. Yet humans had a way of navigating the impossible, of finding solutions where none seemed possible. Rylan knew that whatever lay ahead, hidden threats, unknown anomalies, or deliberate tests, he and his kind could face it. Later in his quarters, he reviewed the data once more. A new alert appeared, minor fluctuations in the station's peripheral sectors. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet consistent with the patterns he had observed. Someone or something was continuing the tests. Rylan's pulse quickened, not from fear but anticipation. Humans had survived deserts, oceans, wars, and the void of space. They had built civilizations, explored new worlds, and solved problems others deemed impossible. On Urindor Station, they would continue to prove their worth. He prepared his equipment for the next cycle, determined to face the challenges head-on. Curiosity, courage, persistence, these were human traits that would guide him, and in a universe that often underestimated humanity, those traits were powerful weapons. Rylan looked out at the sprawling station, lights glittering like distant stars, and smiled. The journey was far from over. The mysteries of the station were deep, the threats real, and the tests ongoing. but humans had a history of rising to every challenge. And Rylan was ready to prove that humans, though small and often underestimated, could shape the fate of worlds, one courageous, calculated step at a time. Rylan awoke to the faint hum of the station, now louder than usual. The recent anomalies had grown, spreading from peripheral sectors to core systems. Sensors indicated that the disturbances were converging toward the station's central control matrix, the heart of Urindor Station. The alerts were urgent, but Rylan's determination was stronger. He knew that the fate of the station and perhaps its inhabitants rested on swift and precise action. He gathered his equipment, checking his multi-tool, portable scanner, and datapad. His experience over the last few cycles had taught him the importance of preparation, observation, and adaptability. Humans were often underestimated, but their ingenuity allowed them to tackle problems far beyond the expectations of others. Today, he would prove it once again. As he approached the central hub, the energy fluctuations were evident even from the corridors. Lights flickered, panels hummed unevenly, and the soft vibrations in the floor resonated through his boots. The station was responding to the disturbances, almost as if it were alive. Rylan felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. He was not just an observer, he was a participant in the survival of the station itself. The hub was more chaotic than before. Towers of crystalline conduits pulsated erratically, energy nodes blinked in warning, and holographic projections displayed unstable patterns. His previous encounter with the unknown figure had taught him the stakes. These disturbances were deliberate, intelligent, and potentially catastrophic. Someone was testing the station's defenses, probing for weaknesses, and only humans, resourceful, persistent, and courageous, could respond with speed and creativity. Rylan activated his scanner, mapping the energy flows in real time. The patterns revealed a clear path of interference leading directly to the central control matrix. It was heavily shielded, designed to resist external tampering. Yet subtle manipulations had found their way through the defenses, exploiting vulnerabilities only a keen observer could detect. Humans, Rylan reminded himself, were experts at spotting opportunities where others saw only obstacles. He followed the energy trail, moving quickly but cautiously. Each step brought new challenges. Automated defense drones activated intermittently, forcing him to pause and reroute. Panels along the walls shifted, changing the corridor's structure. The station seemed to test him at every turn, but Rylan's human adaptability allowed him to respond instinctively. He recalibrated his scanner, anticipated drone patterns, and used the shifting corridors to his advantage, progressing steadily toward the central matrix. Finally, he reached the control chamber. The room was immense, with a domed ceiling reflecting the energy nodes below. At the center floated the central matrix, a massive orb of interwoven energy lines, pulsating erratically. The fluctuations were extreme, threatening to destabilize the station entirely. Rylan activated his scanner and multi-tool, projecting the matrix's complex energy sequences in holographic form. Every line, every pulse, every node was mapped, revealing subtle patterns within the chaos. He realized the disturbances were not random. They were a test, a challenge designed to probe the intelligence of anyone attempting to stabilize the system. "Humans adapt," Rylan muttered. "We observe, we calculate, and we act. Time to prove it." The external manipulations were sophisticated, exploiting timing, energy resonance, and feedback loops. Yet within the patterns, Rylan found a solution, a way to counteract the disturbances by applying a mirrored sequence, carefully calibrated to stabilize the entire network. Hours passed as he worked, adjusting nodes, aligning energy flows, and monitoring feedback. Every correction required precision and focus. A single miscalculation could amplify the disruptions instead of stabilizing them. Rylan relied on the human traits that had brought him this far: observation, creativity, courage, and persistence. As he applied the final adjustments, the central matrix pulsed violently, sending shockwaves through the chamber. Panels flickered, holographic projections spun in rapid arcs, and the air hummed with energy. Rylan's heart raced, but he stayed focused. He visualized the mirrored sequences in his mind, guiding the energy flows, countering the manipulations, and restoring balance. Slowly, the pulses eased. The energy lines stabilized, the holographic patterns aligned, and the central matrix glowed with steady, controlled light. The chamber vibrated softly, a sign that the station's systems were returning to equilibrium. Rylan exhaled, relief flooding him. Humans had once again turned an impossible situation into a triumph. From the shadows, the familiar red-eyed figure emerged. "Remarkable," it said. "Few beings, human or alien, could have accomplished this. You have stabilized the central matrix and prevented a station-wide catastrophe. We may be underestimated, but we rise to challenges others deem impossible. But humans have a history of surviving extreme challenges, exploring unknown worlds, and solving problems others thought unsolvable. I intended to live up to that legacy. The station recognizes your contribution and your species' potential." Before leaving the chamber, Ryland documented everything: the energy anomalies, the manipulated nodes, the sequence corrections, and the encounter with the figure. Knowledge was power, and by recording every detail, he ensured that future generations, human or alien, could learn from his experience. As he exited the central hub, he noticed the station returning to normal. Lights stabilized, energy flows synchronized, and automated systems resumed routine operations. The peripheral sectors, which had experienced minor fluctuations, also stabilized. The station's hum was calm once more, a sign of restored balance. Lyra appeared at the corridor entrance, her violet eyes reflecting both curiosity and approval. "I monitored your progress," she said. "You handled the situation with precision and insight. Your actions have proven the value of human ingenuity. Yet you have shown that even in a world of advanced aliens, humans possess unique strengths. Courage, creativity, and persistence, these are qualities that can shape the fate of civilizations." And here, on Urindor Station, he had proven that human traits could overcome challenges far beyond what many would have thought possible. As he returned to his quarters, Ryland reflected on the journey. From the first day of delivery, encountering Lyra, facing mysterious energy spikes, stabilizing malfunctioning devices, and ultimately saving the central matrix, he had learned the true strength of humanity. Humans survived not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they adapted, persevered, and faced challenges head-on. He prepared his datapad for final documentation, ensuring that every detail of his experiences, discoveries, and solutions was recorded. Knowledge, he understood, was as powerful as any tool or weapon. By preserving what he had learned, he ensured that humans, and anyone who sought to understand, could rise to future challenges with confidence. As the station settled into a rhythm of normal operations, Ryland gazed out at the sprawling structure, lights glittering like distant stars. The station was vast, intricate, and alive with mysteries. But he felt no fear, only anticipation for the challenges yet to come. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that was their greatest advantage. They could think creatively, act decisively, and endure situations that others could not. Ryland smiled to himself. The journey was far from over. Urindor Station still held secrets, tests, and potential dangers. But humans had a way of turning impossible situations into triumphs, and he intended to continue proving it, one courageous, calculated step at a time. In that moment, he realized something profound. Humanity's true strength was not in technology, weapons, or sheer numbers. It was in their spirit. The spirit that allowed them to survive deserts, oceans, wars, and the void of space. The spirit that allowed them to rise against impossible odds and carve their place in the universe. Ryland took a deep breath, feeling the station's energy pulse beneath his feet. He was human, small, fragile, and underestimated, but capable of extraordinary feats. And on Urindor Station, he had proven it. Whatever mysteries lay ahead, whatever challenges awaited, he knew one thing: humans would endure, humans would adapt, humans would rise, and Ryland would be ready.